I remember when my sister Sarah was reflecting, she was remembering back when her two kids were little, and they'd had the radio on at home, and a Doomtree song came on. Now, Doomtree is a local hip-hop group from Minneapolis, and it got to the end of the song, and suddenly she kind of realized she was standing with kids, and she said out loud, "Gosh, I hope there weren't any swears in that song, or any bad words in that song." And my niece and nephew were little at the time, and they said, "Don't worry, Mom, we didn't hear 'shut up' in there at all." And to this day, in their house, shut up is a swear word. Maybe it's a swear word in your house, too. Now, today's divine word we hear from the famed angel Gabriel to an old faithful priest, Zechariah, is just that. Shut up, says the angel. There was no double meaning to the angel's rebuttal to Zechariah's disbelief. The angel spoke plainly and literally. "No more talking. I've had enough from you. Zip it," says the angel. Shh. Now, if you're a little confused, not to worry. There were a whole bunch of verses in there that kind of told how Zechariah came to be mute. He was rendered speechless for most of that story. So here's what happened. So the angel appears to Zechariah. We got the first part of that story. But right after the angel says, "Hey, you're going to have a baby," this is how Zechariah responds. "But that can't be true." That's how he responds, is with disbelief. Now you have to remember that when angels appear in the Bible, you have to get all those precious moments ideas, just put them away. These are not little porcelain, cute little cartoon angels. This is one of my favorite portrayals of an angel, but they were terrifying. And when they showed up, even though they had good news, most of the time the people reacted with fear, which I think is just the right kind of reaction. So the angel Gabriel shows up, tells Zechariah, your wife's going to have a baby, not just any baby, but a baby who's going to prepare the way for the Lord. And Zechariah says, "No, that can't be right." So then the angel, in response to Zechariah's faithless response, says, "Okay, you're done. You get a 9-month timeout. You will be mute until, all these things I just said to you, when they come true, then you'll be able to speak." That's what she tells Zechariah. Just perfect, isn't it? Can you relate to this? When someone has tried to tell you some good news about yourself and it doesn't sound true to you, do you say, "Well, it's not quite right. You don't really have the gist of my life there." Or, "No, my life's not going to go that way. That can't be true." We can relate to Zechariah's disbelief, can't we? But the angel cuts him off and renders him silent. And there he goes, into silence. Now, silence can be terrifying, right? Silence can be awkward. It can be difficult. And in our daily lives, especially in our culture, silence is kind of treated as a bad word, right? So I wonder, in your life, what is silence like for you? Do you long for silence? Do you even get any silence in your day? For those of you that have young kids, do you yearn for it? Do you barricade yourself in the bathroom? Is that the only way you get it? Maybe the only way you get silence is when you take a nap when the kids nap. If the kids nap, right? Or, when faced with silence, do you pick up your smartphone? Or do you flip open your laptop? Or do you get the TV on? Or switch on Pandora? Do you ever shut any of those things up or off? Does silence in your life ever actually, or does it actually feel like it's silent? Does it sound silent? Or is your mind always racing, unable to surrender to the quiet? Does silence kind of bang loudly in your ears? Or maybe you panic just a little bit, thinking about the time slipping away and the things that you should be doing, and do you make to-do lists in your head during silence? Maybe you think it's a waste of time. Does it make you feel out of control? Maybe you're afraid you'll get bored. Or perhaps, and I suspect that this is my problem and yours, is that if it gets too quiet and you're forced to actually get quiet, you might actually have to think about things that are difficult. Like maybe your terrible time you're having at work, or your tenuous financial situation, or your crumbling relationships, or your bad grades, or your depression, or your grief. Now, poor Zechariah had 9 months of silence, of his own personal silence to endure as the unthinkable unfolded in his life. This old, childless couple is going to have a baby. His barren wife, Elizabeth, has a baby. Now, they've probably been known as the old, childless couple for all of their lives, and now that is all done. It's changing. All of a sudden, everything is different. And Zechariah gets no accompanying priestly narrative to speak during his wife's pregnancy, during this time of preparation and longing and disbelief and wonder and terror and anticipation and fear and love. Not a word he gets to speak as his life's story gets utterly rewritten. Yet, it is not as if Zechariah stopped living. He continued to live, but he had to live in a whole new way. Now, the labyrinth we've been using during this Advent season for prayer, it invites you to pray in a whole new way, which actually then has implications of changing the way you might live your life. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had numerous experiences with labyrinths over the years, and I love that way of praying simply because I'm a kinetic learner. The more I move my body, the better. If I put the words down of a sermon and go for a run, the sermon's better, trust me. Things shake loose. I get to lean into some mysteries or settle into some mysteries while I'm running, while I'm moving my body that maybe I wouldn't have been comfortable with before, or a whole new revelation comes to me when I'm moving. Do you learn by doing? Do you learn by moving? So I pray best when I'm in motion. Now, one of the most memorable and formative experiences I've had with the labyrinth was at Holden Village, which is a Lutheran retreat center in the mountains of Washington. So it's an outdoor labyrinth, and I put on a pair of snowshoes after a fresh 10 inches of snow had fallen, and I made my way out to the labyrinth, only to find that my snowshoes were too wide for the labyrinth path. So I took off the snowshoes and then began and entered the labyrinth just in my boots with the snow coming up over my knees. Now, it occurred to me relatively quickly, just a few steps into the labyrinth, that this was going to be some serious prayer, some serious work. Because no one had been to the labyrinth since the snow, and so I was blazing a trail, only it was plodding, right? It wasn't exactly blazing. So I plodded, and I just began to walk through the snow, begging it to move. I found my stride. It was slow, and it was steady. And I was drenched in sweat really soon. And the hair that was exposed outside of my hat had frozen a frosty white in no time. The dense, snow-covered forest served as a cathedral as I trudged through the labyrinth. Initially, it was not beautiful prayer. It was noisy. It was as if I was running my mouth out loud. It sounded a lot like my life, doubts and questions, huffing and puffing, thanks and wonderment, wondering if I would ever get to the middle of the labyrinth, much less out of the labyrinth, wondering if I would get out of it before the sun came down. Yet the further into this snowy labyrinth I got, the quieter I got. The deep quiet blanketed in that snow of the forest, right? That cathedral of snow. and forest, accompanied and urged my silence. The labyrinth shut me up. God shut down my rapid-firing brain filled with worries and white noise. God shut me up in my prayer. Now, at the risk of explaining silence and prayer to you, all I can tell you is this. I received something profound from God in that prayer experience. I was changed when I emerged from that labyrinth. The combination of plodding and trudging and my wordy turned wordless silent prayer, well, it allowed God to speak and work and change me. I'm different today because of that time in that labyrinth. Now, shut up may be a bad word in your house and in our world today, but it seems to be the primary way that God gets a word in edgewise. To shut us up is a divine command and a divine promise. Only when we shut our mouths for a moment do we have a shot at receiving what God always brings to us: forgiveness of sin, compassion, mercy, peace. It is only when we shut up that our hearts and our lives can take in that we do not have the final word on how our story is shaped and rewritten and changed forever. God is the mover and shaker in our story. God is the one who then joins you in your depression and speaks hope to you. God is the one who is with you in the silence of your shattered life, sitting right there in the shards of glass, holding your hand. God is the one who comes into the mess of our lives, and God comes in that quiet, and then slowly begins to rewrite our story. Or, as the case may be, God comes into our life quietly and then tips our lives upside down as a way to rewrite. God changes our lives through silent work sometimes, and through shaking of foundations other times. So it all changes for poor Zechariah today, right? And when he speaks, when he breaks his silence, the only words he can speak are praise. And they are praise words straight out of the Old Testament to tell the rest of us how everything will and is changed by a God who comes to us through an unmarried and pregnant teenage girl and her loyal and befuddled husband who flee for their lives and become refugees, just as they become brand new parents to the infant Jesus, the Savior of the world. Who could write a story that ridiculous but God, right? Zechariah's mouth is loosed and he sings, "By the tender mercy of our God, the dawn from on high will break upon us, to give light to those who sit in the darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace." Only a man who has been silenced by God could speak such tender words about God. It's just a year, or just over a year ago, when our friends, Pastors Larry and Elizabeth Strengy, lost their son, Daniel, to suicide. Larry, if you're not familiar, Pastor Larry works for the Synod office and has been involved in the life of this congregation since before River of Hope really came into being. So many of you know him and love him. But so Elizabeth and Larry's lives were tipped upside down last year and have changed a lot. But let me tell you this. God is at work rewriting their story. Even as I speak to you now, God is at work in their lives. Because throughout the year, many mornings, it was Larry's words on his Facebook page that would be part of my morning devotion. Throughout his year of grieving, he would be out running or skiing or moving some way and would always end up taking a picture of God's vast and beautiful creation. And then he would quote Zechariah. He would use Zechariah's words to proclaim the mystery of God. By the tender mercy of our God, the dawn from on high will break upon us to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. So many times over the past year, I have been comforted and reminded of promise and new life by a man in deep grief. Only out of a life that is silenced by tragedy can these tender words from God emerge. It is out of the unspeakable times that new life, a new story, a new song comes. And it's never our own. It is always God's. It is out of our stunned silence, our shut up mouths, that our stories are rewritten, put back together, and given new words to speak. It's how God works best. Just wait and see. We say, thanks be to God.